Hi, everyone. First and foremost, thank you all so much for having me tonight. It is an honor and privilege to be speaking here today. It's a full house. It's amazing. So before we get started, I would like to recognize a few people in the room today. First of all, my Fiix family. For those of you who may not know, Fiix is a local SaaS shop specializing in computerized maintenance management software. And if you want to know more about it, ask me later or ask anyone, kind of the first two rows up here. Additionally, of course, I have my posse with me tonight. I have my husband, Vlad, in the row, second row, and my mom. And I also have the very first person who hired me for my sales operations role, sales ops enablement role, Sonia Mayer. And as much as I used to love marketing, I am just so extremely passionate about sales operations and enablement. And my role is a little bit different than some of the other speakers tonight because I actually straddle both sales operations and sales enablement. And what I'm here to talk to you about tonight is 5 lessons that I have learned building sales operations and enablement practices from scratch. And when I say learned, I really should have said I'm still learning because this is a never-ending process. Before we get started on the presentation, I'm just curious by a show of hands, how many of you in the room tonight are either leaders who are looking to bring sales operations and enablement function to your organization, or you are a practitioner who is looking to go into an organization and start these practices from scratch? Wow. So quite a few. So I hope that you will be able to take some interesting nuggets from my presentation tonight. And if you have any questions afterwards, I'm happy to spend some time one-on-one. So quickly, why am I qualified to talk to you about this? Just a little bit of background about me. I have spent over 15 years in B2B software, about last 8 years focusing on SaaS business. My experience has been, as mentioned previously by Kenny, across sales operations, enablement, and marketing. I have actually built sales operations and enablement 6 times from scratch so far. Some of it was by my choice and some of it not, but definitely have some insights there to share. I've also gotten acquired 5 times through the companies, and as you can tell, I haven't really gotten rich. I'm still standing in front of you, and I still have my day job. I'm working on that. I'm kind of going smaller and smaller in terms of organizations and hope that, one of these days I will hit the jackpot. And as Kenny mentioned, I'm a founding member of the Sales Enablement Society Toronto chapter. Do we have anyone from the Sales Enablement? We do. Gail? Few people out there. Awesome. Great place. So, okay, just a few logos with companies that I have been previously with. So the first lesson is casting for the right role. And what I mean by this is hiring. It is no surprise that hiring is the cornerstone of building any function in an organization, including sales operations and enablement. And if you are a leader who is actually looking to do this, you may wonder, well, I've done this so many times before in terms of hiring salespeople. I've hired other people. I know how to do this. What is the challenge, and why is there a challenge in doing this, just hiring a person for a sales enablement or sales operations role? There are actually a couple of challenges, big challenges that are going to impact this. Number one, and this is especially true for Toronto and Canada in general, what is sales enablement and/or sales operations to you? In speaking to the sales leaders and even sales enablement and operations practitioner over the last couple of years, what I've come to realize is that we all have different definitions of what this is. And while there is some overlap, if I were to actually poll 10 people in this room and ask them, what is sales enablement to you, I would get 10 different answers. Secondly, how strategic should this role be? Another big one, if you, I don't know if any of you have read the latest CSO Insight Sales Optimization study, but only 20%, 21% of people, sales operations people, have indicated that they are the ones responsible for setting their own charter and mission and strategy for sales operations. Very often, again, I speak to leaders, and when I start probing them more on what are they looking in that sales operations role, it kind of boils down to, well, we really need someone to do our CRM administration, or we need someone to run our sales reporting, some Excel spreadsheets. On the sales enablement side, if I say, okay, what sales enablement, what are you looking for? I often hear, well, we really need a sales trainer. Or we need someone who's going to be developing content for our sales team. So these are two very important factors. So what should you do if you're looking to hire someone to start this function for you? Number one, you need to define the purpose. So forget about all the buzzwords. Forget about sales enablement, sales effectiveness, sales operations, revenue operations. Think about why are you hiring that person? What is the need? What is the problem you're looking to solve? Secondly, think about the level of the leader you want to bring in. What are you looking to do? Are you looking for someone to truly start that practice from scratch and build it over time? Or are you just looking for someone to truly run some analytics and some support for you? Personality. I have worked with leaders who are very, very different in terms of how they approach and manage their business. There are people who are very hands-off and who are truly looking for someone to take the ball and run with it and start the practice based on best practices. At the same time, I've worked with leaders who have a very clear vision to the tactical level of what they're looking to execute. So these are all very important factors and all of the things you need to consider before you actually start going and looking who you're going to bring on to your team. The next lesson is resist the urge to renovate the moment you come to the organization. And what I mean by that is that I'm sure many of us here have gone through the renovations, and like actual condo or house renovations. And sometimes we go into it and we're like, yeah, I'm ripping this shit apart completely, and I'm going to be putting in new stuff. And then about 3 months later, I don't know, maybe that's just me, it happened to me, but 3 months later we go, you know what, actually, I probably should not have made that a bar, I should have made it an island. And these little things, right? Same is the case when you go into an organization. You're an experienced person who has done this before. The tendency will be, I need to prove myself. I need to show what I can do. I'm just going to go in. I'm going to start ripping shit apart, and I'm going to start putting things in. But again, going back to the experience with these 6 organizations, every time, things have been different. And even the same problems, I have had to resolve different ways. So instead of doing that, instead of going in and ripping apart, what should you do? How should you spend the first 90 days? You should talk to your teams. You should really, really spend time talking to your teams. Talk to people individually, collectively, formally, informally, many, many times over. Get to know people, get to know their challenges. Then get curious with data. Dig deep into the data. Try to look at patterns, right? Try to see what the data is telling you. Anyone wants to get that? Observe and shadow. Sit with your reps. Sit with your frontline leaders. Observe how they do their daily work. What do they do? Next, if you are not a person, a leader, who is comfortable with some hands-on tactical work, like a practitioner, do not go into an organization that is looking to start up this function from scratch. Chances are you're going to be the only contributor, the sole individual contributor in this role for anywhere between 3 to 12 months. And you're going to have to do it. And you know what? There's a lot of benefit to you doing this. You actually get to understand in depth what the challenges are and how you go about solving them. The next one, build gradually. I'm sure you've all heard the maxim, perfection is the enemy to progress. And it is nowhere as true as it is here. I have seen some phenomenal people come in, some phenomenal ideas, and wanting to kind of deploy large-scale programs, and they fail miserably. And so what you need to remember is, as a practitioner going in, you are not writing a dissertation. This is not an academic exercise where you have to prove to people that you know how to put a big plan, a big framework together. You are going there to actually produce results. You've been hired as a practitioner with a lot of experience, and your work before you, your history, speaks for you. So make it functional. Break it up in smaller increments and launch those. So, for example, you go into I've gone into organizations, and the first thing I usually get is, oh, we need 40 pieces of content, right? And then you're like, well, on top of that, we need a platform that's going to manage all of that. And all of a sudden, it becomes a big, huge project. Well, start small. Start with 3 pieces of content. See how it goes, right? Then add 3 more, 3 on. And so make it functional and make it modular. And then because you do that, then what you need to do is you iterate, refine, toss, and rebuild. So you take that, whatever that is, you refine it, you launch it into the market. Chances are that people who you're launching it to are going to be much more receptive to such small pieces of deliverables. Automate selectively and carefully. So again, going back to my comment, chances are you're not going to have someone to support you for anywhere 3 to 12 months. You're going to have to welcome automation into your life. And that doesn't necessarily mean going out there on day 5 and starting to buy every single platform out there. Oftentimes, you can just look within what you already have and see how you can optimize what is in there already in-house. By the time sales operations and enablement person gets brought on, usually there is a CRM in place, because there's usually about 10 to 15 reps already in there. There's been some work done. There is some reporting. However, it's likely crude, and it's just not optimized well. So, start there, and as you're actually looking at improving processes, start defining what additional automation you need in order to remove yourself from the equation and in order to be able to scale yourself. And last but not least, prioritize like crazy. This goes for like any job out there, but it is especially important here because the growth of the sales team significantly outpaces the growth of the support team like sales operations and enablement. So you will have to do a very good job prioritizing. I don't have a lot of words of wisdom. This is also work in progress for me. Some days I feel I'm better at this than other days. But one thing that has worked really well for me in the past are prioritization sessions with the frontline leaders. And by this, I don't mean going into a meeting with the frontline leaders with like a laundry list. Here's my laundry list. Here's like 50 things on it. Let's go. What's in, what's out? I actually mean taking the time to understand financial and operational impact of those initiatives and being able to present those back to the leader, and then collectively as a group deciding on what gets priority over other stuff. So if there's one thing I would like you to take away from all of this is that when you are doing this, when you're starting up a sales operations and enablement function, do so in baby steps. And by baby steps, I don't mean do it slowly. If you guys have seen babies walk around, you know how they do. It's tiny little steps, but they're really fast. So, do that. Tiny little steps, really fast, and then if you fall, just get back up and keep going. And that's it for me. Any questions?
For someone who's looking to get into a sales ops or sales enablement role, and they're maybe an IC today, individual contributor, what advice would you give someone who's looking to enter into to one of those roles?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Kenny. So first and foremost, I have yet to meet a sales operations or enablement leader that hasn't come from another area of business. So I would say 98% of the time, people come to sales operations and enablement either from sales, marketing, IT, operations, HR, you name it. My advice would be to find that one thing that you're really good at and find a way to connect that back to what the sales organization needs. I'll give you an example. When I was being hired to my first sales operations role, I had no idea what sales operations was. Like, I kind of knew. There was a bunch of guys I used to work with. They used to do these things called sell-through reports, and that was it. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess that's what it is. I was being hired because of my project management skills. That's what that organization needed. It was called sales operations, but it was really about pushing some projects forward, and that was my strength. So know what your strength is, and then look for opportunities. Again, going back, forget about the buzzwords, go for the opportunities that can maximize those strengths. Is that helpful? Okay.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on what's the best way to remunerate somebody who works in sales ops. Do you tie that back to the sales that are coming in?
Sure.
Or efficiencies? Like, what's your best approach for doing that?
So it's the first, so this particular role with Fiix, it's the first time, so obviously there's a base, right? Like anyone has a base, but in terms of the bonus structure, it's the first time I'm actually tied to the company ARR. So we obviously measure our success based on the new ARR, and I love it. I actually think that sales operations and enablement person should be tied, their compensation should be tied to some form of a revenue component.
Last question.
Oh, we have one there, one there.
Hi.
Yes.
In your experience with working with different organizations in their sales cycle, which phase of the sales cycle have you found is consistently the most challenging one, and why, and how do you think is, like, what are the biggest challenges, would you say, in different sales cycles? Which phase?
Discovery. Like, is that what you're asking me?
Yeah.
I think discovery is probably the hardest to master, to be honest with you. It's just, it takes a lot of education, a lot of experience, but I would say discovery was definitely, it is a bit of an art, right? Like, you have to be really good at it. You have to, to get there, you have to practice. But that would be the one that I found the most. Just getting to the bottom of that pain and understanding what that pain is, yeah. Like, oftentimes I find, you get to that pain level that's kind of on the surface, and I don't know how many of you here know Sandler, but there's that L1, L2, right? So you get to the certain point, but you don't actually manage to dig deeper all the way down to understand the true core of the pain. So I find that that's the reason why probably discovery is the biggest challenge.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to go.
Thank you.
Kenny, was it good?
Great job.